Hi everyone, welcome back to Interact Amsterdam Virtual Conference 2023. I hope you enjoyed our first talk from the fantastic Emily Trotter on planet-centered design. For our next talk, we have Venessa Bennett, who is Director of UX at Dye & Durham, with her talk, Unleashing the Power of Insights. In this talk, Venessa is going to discuss how designers can unleash the power of research to influence product strategy and company direction. Please do join in the discussion in the chat. Just make sure your chat settings are switched to everyone and not just hosts and panelists, and that way everyone will be able to see your messages. And if you've got any questions for Venessa, you can submit them using the Q&A function, and I'll get through as many as I can at the end. As usual, we're using auto-generated captions from Rev today. They might get a bit muddled live, just as is the nature of them, but we'll make sure these are all tidied up when we post the recording on our YouTube channel. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Venessa, to kick things off.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'll just give you a quick intro. So I'm Venessa, as you know, and I'm a design leader, speaker, and a problem solver. I also do a bit of mentoring. And previously, I've worked at more UK household names like Rightmove, which is a property portal, Vodafone, and more recently, Kazoo. And like Henry said, I'm currently Director of UX at Dye & Durham. So just before I go into it, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of a background around Dye & Durham. They provide legal software solutions for legal professionals. We're a global company, so we've got offices in the UK, we've got offices in Australia, South Africa, and Canada. We're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we've got over 60,000 global customers. And I think everyone's just come back from lunch, so I thought I'd do a little bit of a pop quiz just to make sure that you are all active and ready to go. So it's only 2 questions, so don't worry. So the first question is, what percentage of consumers will not shop with a competitor after having a poor user experience? So put in the chat what answer you think that is. So do you think it's A, 89%, B, 54%, or C, 26%? So I'll give you a bit of time to put it in the chat. So we've got B from someone. We've got A. We've got a couple of A's coming through. Oh, we've got quite a few A's. Oh, we've got a rogue one, which is a C. Okay, hearing. Anyone else? Yeah, mostly A's and B's. And shout out to the people who got A. It's actually 89%, which is quite high. And I quite like this fact, essentially, because it shows how sophisticated consumers are becoming. I think they also know they may not know the term UX, but they actually know what a bad experience is, and will not really tolerate a bad experience and just go somewhere else for a better and more premium experience. I think when I started out, there was there's a bit of a rhetoric around, even if it is a poor user experience, as long as the product is strong enough, people kind of work it out. And I think this statistic almost challenges that. And I think it shows how important actually user experience is. So the next question I have is quite an interesting one. So how much did ESPN.com's revenue increase after they listened to their community and incorporated suggestions into their homepage redesign? So is it A, 53%, B, 27%, or C, 35%? Add to the chat. We've got a quick A, few A's. Anyone else? We've got a C. Couple of C's, mostly A's. Anyone else want to add anything to the chat? Okay, so most of the people on the call on the Zoom think it's A. but actually it's C. And you might think that's actually quite low, but for revenue, that's actually quite high. That's like over a third. And what I like about this statistic and what this says is just how important what we do, which is UX, which is research. Actually, not only is it about making the experience better, but it can actually improve and affect the bottom line of a business. So the stuff that we do, I think we all know that it's important, but it really does show how important the stuff that we do is, and how it can actually increase profit and revenue for the companies that we work for, essentially. So I've got a few more chat questions and then you can all relax. But I just wanted to gauge before I get into the main chunk of the talk is what is your role at your current places? What do we have? Who do we have listening in? Do we have UX designers? Do we have UX researchers? Maybe you're a PM. It'd be good to know who we have. So just put in the chat who you are. So we've got some UX research, content SEO, UX designer. Anyone else? UX designer? Assistive technology specialist. Hi, Madeline. Content designer. Okay. Anyone else want to add you as a researcher? Okay, so we've got a good mix of people, and I'm gonna assume that are you all in cross-functional teams? Like, how are you working at the moment? Again, put that in the chat. Are you in a cross-functional team working with engineers and PMs? Or are you almost separate, is the other question that I wanted to ask. Freelance, okay. Agile and cross-functional team. Oh, yeah, cross-functional team. Okay, cool. So this talk will be relevant for most people. So what I'm going to be doing is really focusing mainly with a designer who's in cross-functional teams. So if you're a content designer or a UX designer, even a UX researcher, if you're in a cross-functional team, a lot of this will be quite relevant, but I do talk about more strategic stuff later on, which applies to everyone in the call. Last question of what I'm going to ask you in the chat. So how is everyone using UX research at the moment? Are you doing UX research? Are you doing a bit? Are you doing more tactical kind of research? It'd be good to know kind of how everyone in the chat is using UX research. Limited, okay. Anyone else? Okay, cool. So I think I've worked in loads of different companies. So we've got so a lot of people are saying that limited amounts of research that happen, and that is quite a common thing. Okay, yeah. Okay, that is quite a common thing that I hear. And I've been in maybe big organizations, also smaller startups. And I think these are the three things that I hear a lot more common in all of those environments. So classic is we don't have access to users or no budget. I hear that a lot in startups, and I also hear that quite a lot in B2B businesses as well. A thing that I hear from a lot of PMs or maybe even engineers is we already know what the problem is. Why do we need to do any research? Why do we need to do discovery? And a classic that I hear pretty much in every company that I've been in is we don't have time to do research. I get the, oh, do we really need to do discovery and spend time on this? And I think this just goes to show like how like people non-designers kind of impression of what research actually is. They don't necessarily understand why we do research and the value of research, but they also just see it as wasting time and not actually getting through to like the heart of it, which is like designing something, right? So I'm going to go into how you can kind of challenge some of these ideas. So the classic that I've had quite a bit is no access to users and no budget. So I've worked in a couple of startups where I've joined, there's no research happening at all, but we do have a customer base. And what we started doing and why I started doing with my teams is what you want to do is just get some data, any kind of data. And we know it's not ideal, but I think just getting some data from users or any kind of user is really, really important, just to show the value and show how you can quickly get some insights. So start with doing some internal testing with anyone. Also start doing guerrilla testing. I think the testing with someone who doesn't really know the context of the product helps show whether your product is usable or not. I think in the background also, and then as a side kind of quest, start making a relationship with the sales team. See if you can get access to users. It's going to take a lot longer, especially when working with either sales or account managers. They're quite protective of their clients and they don't necessarily want someone from tech to talk to them, but really speak to the people in the sales and your account managers to say that you want to talk to some users, explain the purpose of it, explain why you want to do it. And more often than not, what you can do is like create almost a beta group of friendly customers. The account managers and the sales team probably don't want you to speak to the customers that are disgruntled. It'd be great if you could, but you probably want to try and speak to those users who are friendly, who really like the brand, and see if you can get in front of them. I think even like even what you could do is get the sales team to ask certain questions and write down what the answers are. Again, it's just trying to get as much insight and data as possible. The other one is we already know what the problem is. And I think this is where, as designers, we really need to just challenge people and really ask, like, okay, so if we know what the problem is, how do we know we solved the problem? What metrics are we using? And really kind of flip it and say, well, testing with users can give us certainty. The other thing is just testing it Black Ops style and getting some information through. I think one thing that I've done quite a lot is, especially at previous companies that I've worked with, a lot of decisions get made looking at commercials and looking at what's going to make money. And my question to a lot of them is like, well, this is a great idea, but how do our users feel about it? Will our users actually go for this? And I think that's where research really comes into play, is to really showcase, does the users have an appetite for this? And just questioning and asking those questions really helps, like, get people to almost step back and think, oh yeah, actually you're right, maybe we should do some user testing. The other one is a classic. It's we don't have time to do research. And I think you always have time to do research, even if you have one day. Again, think about what methods and tools you can use to do quick results. Do it anyway. See if there's a way that you could do it in parallel with the core stuff that you're doing. So if you're a UX designer, is there a way you could do some user testing quickly, but also still show that you could deliver? I'm not going to go into dual track discovery and delivery, but that is something that you could probably look into as a way to like show that you can deliver quite quickly. But I think one of the key things that a lot of people miss, and I think as designers we know this, but we need to kind of communicate this a lot more, is we ultimately research to reduce risk and ensure that we are building the right thing for the business, the right thing for our users, right? And this is the thing that as designers, we need to advocate and showcase more, that this is the reason why we're researching. We're not just researching for the sake of it, we're researching to reduce risk ultimately for the products that we're building, because software and building software is really expensive, and it can be expensive if you make a mess. And don't be afraid to ask those difficult questions. Like, if it doesn't make sense, if you don't quite think that it's solving the problem it's meant to solve, or we don't have enough data, really ask those difficult questions around like the why behind it. And I think the key thing and the two kind of key skills to really leverage in a lot of the situations that you may be in is collaboration and communication. These two things are the key things that I think they're just really key to highlight user value and highlight why we do research and the value that we can bring. I'm going to deep dive into both of these things next. So collaboration, essentially getting others involved in your research. And it's really about taking people along the journey. So think about those key collaboration sessions, but also how you compare with non-designers when researching. So with key collaboration sessions, identify key sessions for collaboration. So I think what I think about is there's always that stakeholder or that engineer that kind of has all these ideas, that always tries to derail things and have all these like wacky ideas. Sketching sessions and collaboration sessions are for those kind of stakeholders. It's really great to just get them in, pull in all the ideas. Sketching sessions work really well, and getting a mix of people in the room is always really key. So getting an engineer in the room for these collaboration sessions are great because an engineer will never sketch anything that they can't build, that isn't feasible. So instantly you get an idea of feasibility. With a stakeholder, them sketching something, you get an idea of where their head's at, where they see the product, where they see what the vision is. And the same with PMs. If you get them in sketching early, then you can really understand what the vision is and how they see the product shaping up. In that session, you can identify key metrics to measure and really identify the problem you want to solve. So you might end up in that session and it just ends up being super huge. There's loads of things, but then you can work with the team to almost just pinpoint what problem you want to solve. And the basis of some of these collaboration sessions is essentially what your research plan is, or maybe it's an early roadmap. So it's really important to do these collaboration sessions. And then after that, what the next steps are. My favorite and the thing that I always get designers in my team to do, and I've done personally, is pair with non-designers when researching. So at Kazoo, we did a lot of ethnographic research. So we went out in the field and observed some of our users. We always got engineers to come with us when we're testing. A good one is to get them to write notes, so you can just concentrate on the testing. Another one is just getting them to observe and see what's going on. But writing notes really helps. In my previous company, when I was working at a startup called Porter, what we did is I actually partnered with the engineer in the discovery process. So they actually helped me do the user testing. And when we were testing, we got all the engineers and other people to do the notes. You can also create observation rooms as well, so you can get stakeholders and other people to observe what's going on with the research. But the one thing I would definitely do is make sure that even if you can't get engineers involved in the research, make sure that you're informing them what the insights are. And I think it leads me nicely onto communication, which is basically research PR. It's your best friend when it comes to advocating for research and really promoting research in the organization. So it's really about telling those design stories. So like I said, like ensure that you're sharing those insights regularly and early. Share where you are in the process, but also share what you are doing and why. So when you're sharing those insights regularly, it's really good to kind of almost just say, like, what have you learned? And what are you doing off the back of what you've learned? I think a lot of the time we don't talk about what we didn't build or what we decided not to do off the back of research and what we found. And that equals to a company saved money because, like I said, like software is really expensive. So that's one thing to really think about. Sharing where you are in the process is really key, because a lot of the time that I hear, especially from non-designers, and especially if you're in a cross-functional team as the only designer in that team, people don't really know what you do day in and day out. They know you do design, but they don't know what you're doing. So if you share where you are in the process, what you're doing, when it's going to come up, what's next, how long it's going to take, you almost start demystifying that design process a lot more. And people start understanding, okay, why you need to do this stage and why essentially the design process takes as long as it does. And the longer you take on some of these things, the better quality you will get. So yeah, really start demystifying that process. If your team does demos, ensure that you're involved in the demo. And a lot of the time when we do demos, it's about what we delivered, but also ensure as a designer and work with your PM on this to bring in where you are with discovery. Like, what have you learned from discovery this sprint or the last round of user testing that you've done, and again, show what you're going to do off the back of that. So are you going to iterate? Are you going to have you decided to scrap an idea? Really get into the habit of informing stakeholders and other people throughout the organization, not just the stakeholders and not just the people in your team, around the things that you've learned. And when communicating, and I think these are the key kind of things to keep in mind, is think about data. So what data do you have? What data can you use? So things like 4 out of 5 users that we tested with said X. That really helps. I think that helps people who are a lot more commercial and think about numbers. So being a lot more data driven will give more weight to the research that you're doing. Leads me on to laddering up to the business goals. So make sure that you ladder up to those business goals. I think the thing that's really important about this is that it shows that you have a commercial mindset. And again, it helps with those stakeholders or those people in your company who are a lot more commercial. And it also shows, as a designer and a design team, how you are actually impacting the company goals. And I think the other thing is around time boxing. So how long is something going to take, and when is it going to be delivered, and what are you going to get out at the end of it, or what is the team going to get out at the end of it? Really key for people to understand just how long your tasks take. Again, understanding that design process. And I think the last bit is think ahead. So really start working with your PM a lot more to think about what's coming up and how the research that you're doing actually ladders up to that bigger goal. And I really believe that UX research has the power to influence the direction of the company. Another stat, because I love a stat, is user research statistics show that just 5 users are enough to find 85% of your site's issues. And if we go back to those facts that we said at the top, like, a bad experience means that 89% of users will actually go somewhere else. So again, we know that this is going to really change the bottom line of a company, right? So now I'm going to talk about how to get more from your research that you're doing. I think a lot of people in the chat said they were doing like focus groups and surveys. Maybe there's some more tactical research that's happening as well, or maybe more in the terms of validation. I see that a lot. So when I was working at Kazoo, for example, when I first joined, a lot of the UX researchers, or a lot of the kind of research that we were doing, was more around validating features and making sure that, big tick, this works. But the next few slides really talk about how we can get more out of that research that we're doing. So every time you speak to a user, it's an opportunity. So when you're having your user testing sessions, really think about the structure of it and think about what activity you could do, how to structure your sessions, what questions to ask. The way I've done it historically is at the beginning, we ask those kind of, it's pretty standard, and I think a lot of people know, you ask those kind of background questions. And then you go into essentially what you want to test. So it's either 2 versions of something, or, a prototype, etc., etc. But what we started doing at startups and actually at Kazoo is we started asking more strategic kind of questions. And what I mean by that is, one of the things is work with your PMs to kind of understand, okay, so what are you thinking about that's coming ahead? And what questions do you have around that? Or what would you need in order to clarify this feature that you're thinking about? And start trying to slip that in almost when you're talking to your users. So you could start with asking like 2 or 3 questions around that. Maybe you do that at the end. You can also think about this screenshot here is where we did a card sorting exercise with our users to understand what features were priority for a user. So there's things like that that you could do. Again, when you do those kind of activities, that helps with prioritization of features when you're working with PMs. So you can see how some of these research activities can actually start influencing the direction of a product and the order that we do features. So it's really important when you're speaking to users, before you're speaking to them, to really think about how you're structuring those sessions. And you've only really got an hour, but I think you can actually get quite a bit out from an hour. And I think the next thing is to put conceptual ideas in front of users. So I like doing this quite a lot, actually, and a lot of the products that I've built have come from putting conceptual ideas in front of users. So the way I've done it historically is essentially you have your core of your prototype, and maybe you'll just link an extra feature in there. It's really good when you're trying to understand data and the types of data that users are interested in, especially for B2B customers, if there's anyone who is in the B2B company at the moment. So an example of this is when I was working for Rightmove, and I was essentially doing a dashboard portal, and I basically looked at the data that we have and put 4 boxes and just wrote the data that we had. And then with an estate agent, when I was testing, I basically was just like, what do you think of this? And he started describing how he would actually use that data and how useful that data was. So if you have any conceptual kind of ideas, it's really good to just put them in front of users, even if it's kind of iffy, it's not really detailed. You can walk through it with your users and they will basically essentially tell you what the wireframe should be or what the content should be, basically by saying, well, this is not useful to me, but what would be useful would be this. This is not useful to me because I only trade in the UK in this example. Actually, this will be useful. So again, it helps you understand what features and what kind of data are attractive to your users. And as you test, you'll be able to get a picture of like what that actually looks like, and almost a top 5 and almost a prioritization. Another thing is to cross-reference your insights with qualitative data. So depending on your organization, whether you've got a data team, if you've got an insights team, a sales team, even account management, really sync with them and get together with them and see if they've got any data. They probably do have some data. And the thing with this is it's really important to see if there's a correlation. So talking to users will give you a detailed understanding of the why. But the insights will really give you the scope of it, right? And this is the reason why this is really key, is because a lot of stakeholders, and I still get this to this day, will be like, well, why are you testing with 5 users? And I was at Kazoo for 2 years. We were really moving forward with the research, and we really got buy-in from research, and we still got that from the stakeholders. So it never dies, I'm afraid. So essentially, it's all about kind of bolstering your findings. So see if you can see, for example, your findings that you found. Is there any other larger data, qualitative data that you could have to really back that up, to show that, look, it's not an anomaly, it's not just these 5 users, this is what the statistics are saying across our customer base. So this is really important. So try and partner with some of the different departments in your organization. If you don't have an insights team or a data team, You can also think about doing surveys as well. Again, those give you the scale, and you can put that together and it just makes a more powerful case. So that's the way we've kind of tackled it here. This, this is what we want to do. So this essentially is the screenshot is a database that I created at previous company, which basically had all the feedback from sales that was coming in, and we tagged it, and that allowed us to build up a picture over time with our insights. So one of the key things that I would say, really think about how you can build up a picture over time with your insights and build a research repository. So there are various tools you can use. So you can use Dovetail, but equally at startups with low budgets, if you've got Notion, or I haven't done this with Confluence, so big disclaimer here, but if you've got something like Notion, you can probably create a database. With our database, essentially what we did is we just started writing all our notes and storing our notes, and then started with some tags and just tagging it up. And then eventually I got to the stage where I could get the sales team and the account management team to put any comments and any feedback that they're getting from users into Notion on a separate table, and tag it up. And then I was able to almost just create a linked database, which gave me an idea of what things are coming through from our users. And one of the things that I'm quite proud at when I was there is we got to the stage where product was using it, and product was looking up things to see what users have said around, say, for example, quotes, because we had a quote feature, or what users talked about accounting. And the good thing with this is it enables you to use the insights that you found. Once you've kind of built up that bigger picture, it enables you to use insights to suggest new features and ideas. So a good exercise to do with your PMs and engineers is an opportunity solution tree. So this is an idea that came from Teresa Torres. So she's come up with the kind of product trio, which is engineering, design, and product. And the product solution tree basically starts with the user, and it's very user focused, and starts with essentially the jobs to be done, or what jobs that they want to do. And then it goes down to what ideas you can do. So that second level is what ideas you could do to kind of solve that job to be done. And then underneath would be the different experiments you could do. So it's all about trying to quickly validate these ideas. But what I did when I was working with the PM is I actually started using the database to pull out quotes, and quotes from what users had said. Again, it bolsters some of these ideas that we've had. And also we started using some more qualitative data as well to, again, help us with prioritization, but also to add weight to some of these ideas. And once you've got almost a theme, as a designer, as a UX researcher, you could then zoom in to what the core problems are. So you're not almost starting from scratch every time. You're able to kind of zoom in on the core problem. The good thing also with the research repository is you're able to see what's previously been researched as well. So again, that's quite key. So you're not starting from scratch all the time, and you're not repeating additional research. And I think the key thing is, as designers, we need to think strategically in order to create influence. So we need to always be thinking one step ahead. So similar to what PM is doing, where they're thinking ahead, we need to be working with them to understand, well, what is ahead? And essentially, it's about providing clarity for the future. So we really want to be able to but we want to create some focus for the later and the next. And when we start doing that as designers, we actually start shaping what the product is. So things like hard sorting helps shape the order of the features that gets delivered. The things like sharing conceptual ideas gets to clarify that later piece. And again, you could see how it switches from just being driven from commercials and basically what the highest paid person in the room says to actually what are users saying. And then as designers, once we know what that future looks like, we can actually craft better experiences. So how can you think strategically? I think it's all about getting ahead of the game. So thinking in your teams or thinking by yourself is like, how does this that I'm working with help with the team mission? So really kind of thinking not just on that feature that you're building, but actually how does that puzzle piece fit into the bigger picture? Creating North Stars and validating with users. This is one thing that in every team that I've been in, I've advocated for us to do this, is spending some time as design team out and really thinking about what is the future of your product or what is the future of your feature that you're working in, sketching that out, again, like doing a kind of high fidelity design and validating that with users. And what that does is that gives you extra data and extra clarity as well. So this is the key. I think if you do one thing, it's definitely try and create a North Star. I think what it also does is help visualize the vision as well. And visualizing the vision really helps get everyone on board. It really also helps with engineers as well. So when you're talking to engineers and you're like, I really want this feature, and there's a bit of a fight or a tussle around it, you can actually say, well, this is how it fits into the bigger picture, and clearly show in your prototype and bring in that data as well and that evidence around how it fits into that bigger picture. And that leads me on to the last point, which is like using insights to really shape those opportunities. And it's really key to kind of get that influence from a user perspective early. So I'm going to go into a bit of a case study of how we've done this at Kazoo. So what we did, and I just want to say, like, as the UX researchers are positioned strategically. So at Kazoo, what we did is we had all the designers doing the more tactical kind of research, and then we're doing a bit of strategic research. But the UX researchers that we had were really focused on being a quarter ahead, working with our senior stakeholders on themes that were coming up, and researching it. So this one is around understanding the vehicle's returns process. So the problem was that returns came a massive problem due to its high cost. So anyone who doesn't know Kazoo, essentially Kazoo is a platform where you can buy a car and we will deliver it to you. You buy a car completely digitally and we will deliver it to your home. So the thing about cars is they are big assets. They, unlike, I guess, traditional retail, they are unique. So you're only buying one of one, essentially, and it's a high cost. So the logistics is a high cost and cost a lot to actually move these vehicles around the country and to the end customer. And one of the things is returns really became a big problem because it costs so much to actually deliver that car, but then pick it up. And the aim was to reduce the return rate by 5%. And what we had is we wanted to understand what the current process is for and the challenges from a customer perspective. One of the things that we actually fell into was the fact that it was so easy to be able to buy a car online. I think users had this perspective that it was, the impression that it would be really, really quick to then return the car. So what we did is we gathered themes from stakeholders. So this is a half-an-hour session that we do on Miro, where we really try and shape the brief. So we ask what the key questions, research questions are. We ask what the key metrics are that they're looking at. We also even ask how they're planning to use the research, how involved they want to be as a stakeholder. So we ask all these questions, and it really allows us to, one, define the approach that we're going to have, but two, also like really shape the research plan and how long we're going to take on it. So yeah, and we get really high engagement from our stakeholders for this session. We get really good feedback. It's only a half an hour session, so that's why we always get stakeholders kind of coming into it. What we also do off the back of this is we identify any key people that need to be involved, and we create a Slack channel dedicated to this project, where we will give regular comms and regular updates on what's happening on the project. And what we did is we spoke to customers, but we also spoke to customer service operatives. We created a experience map as well to really understand what customers were saying and how they were feeling about it. And our results and our findings were customers, like I said at the top, was customers expected a really easy process. And the poor communication made customers feel like they were in the dark. And when they did call up customer service, it felt like there was a lack of cohesion across the team. So they would talk to one person and they would say one thing, they would talk to another person, they would say something different. People weren't getting back to them, etc., etc. And like going back to that, the first fact that we talked about earlier is the perception of Kazoo actually deteriorated with that poor returns experience. And they will probably tell their friends not to buy from Kazoo because of the poor experience. So what actually happened off the back of that research is they ended up spinning up a dedicated returns team. We actually changed some of the comms plan around returns, and we now send an email to outline those timeframes. And the other thing is there were new processes set up to ensure a consistent experience for our users. And we were able to reduce the returns rate by around 5%. And I think what I like about this is it really shows how research doesn't necessarily indicate a change of UI or product. What we did is we actually changed and improved the processes of the company and the business. And I think that's one of the things that when I advocate for research, and I always talk about how important research is and design is, this is the power of it. It can really change our processes and spot issues internally by, again, showcasing and telling other people within the company how our customers are feeling about the experience. So I'm just going to wrap up. And in summary, the 4 kind of key takeaways that I want you to take away is there's always an opportunity to research. So really find out, and sometimes you have to get creative, especially if there's no budget or you're not getting access to users. Like, always think about how you can get data and how you can validate some of these ideas that are coming through. Really. And that leads me on to being smart on the way you structure your interviews. Think about how you can get some of that strategic future thinking in those interviews, and again, get more data to bolster your designs and bolster the ideas that are coming through. And communicate and share your insights as early and as often as you need to and as possible. This helps take people along the journey, helps people understand your process, also helps highlight user needs and what users are saying about the products that we're building. And then the last one is bring others into your process, like be as collaborative as possible. Again, it creates empathy for users and it really does make your job a lot easier. So that's it for my talk. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I will be recruiting in the new year, hopefully. So definitely add me on LinkedIn if you are looking to make a move. And for further reading, I've got some blog articles on some research and stuff like that. So definitely check out my website, and I open the floor for questions.
Amazing. Thanks, Vanessa. God, it's a great talk, and yes, so much useful information in there. Yeah, I love what you're saying about kind of the key collaboration sessions. If anyone does have any questions, as Vanessa said, please do submit them now, either in the chat or using the Q&A box. Vanessa, I mean, just going to kind of the key collaboration sessions. I know you kind of touched on it briefly, but it'd be great if you could kind of say a bit more around kind of how you kind of deal with friction from those kind of within the key collaboration sessions.
Good question. I think there's two ways of doing it. So it depends on the friction. So if there's friction point where the meeting is getting completely derailed, a parking lot is always a good thing, where you're just like, this is a really good point. We're just going to take it and we're going to put it in the parking lot. And if we have time, we will discuss it. That's one way to deal with people that are derailing sessions. I think the other thing is almost just like, what data, bringing it back to data, I think is always the key thing. So if there is friction and there's an argument between an idea or something like that, it's like, well, what data do we have? How can we validate one over the other? So I think trying to be as data driven as possible, but also always anchoring back to the purpose of the session and the problem that you're trying to solve is always one of the ways to just anchor people back rather than go off onto a tangent. I think the most frustrating thing is to have a session and not get out of it what you wanted. So I think it's really trying to manage the session as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think like it's probably, worth kind of businesses actually kind of giving formal collaboration training, I suppose, because I mean it is such a useful skill to have, and it's often quite difficult with when people don't have those skills, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially nowadays where as a design, I think the designer's role ends up being a translator, right? So you're translating what the business wants, what engineers kind of want, and what product wants, and always trying to translate this. And the only way you could do this is through collaboration, and through, whether you like it or not, getting in a workshop and being face to face. And unfortunately, a lot of people see this as a waste of time, when actually these collaboration sessions can really set up a project or really set things up. So yeah, I would like to see a lot more collaboration, advocacy for collaboration, because I think in a lot of organizations it doesn't come naturally. So yeah, and I think just collaborating with different people and getting those different perspectives will always make a product stronger, or always make it a better product, and easier as well. If you get everyone in the room early, it's a lot easier later on down the line. So you don't end up with a stakeholder saying, well, how come I didn't get my idea in, or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question here from Serena. Serena asks, they say, you mentioned about using Notion to gather insights. I've tried to implement Notion, but didn't get much uptake. Now I'm trying to implement Confluence into our team as we have access. What are the challenges of trying to get a collaborative space in your teams? Do you have any tips? Thanks.
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the challenges is actually getting designers to put the information in. So it's, as a repository is as useful as the information that's in it. So I think it's almost like thinking about how you can incorporate the updating of a repository into the design process. So what we've done previously, or what I've done previously, is we just directly write the notes, creating templates as well if you can. So it's just like one click and then you create just create the template. So that allows you to structure the notes, or structure the insights that are coming through. I think the other challenge is then moving from designers using it to actually PMs and it being used strategically. And I think that's where just the advocacy for research really comes in. So working with the PMs, and some of it is a bit of training as well, right? So you might have to do some training with the PMs around, we have this resource, here's how you can look up some information of stuff that we've previously done. I think you want to start with the designers first and get the designers in some kind of groove, and then work with the PMs and do some training with everyone around how to use this, and also the benefits, because I think a lot of people can see this as a waste of time. But I think if you can show how actually it's important and actually it saves time in the long run, you'll definitely get some buy-in and a lot more people using it. So yeah, that's how we've done it. Also things like if you're using Slack or Teams, how can you link Confluence and all those things to Slack and Teams to bring people to the resource? So there's different, I think about the comms. So once you've added some insights, so you've gained some insights, is there a way that you can communicate that out to get people to come into the repository?
Awesome, thank you. And we have one more question here from Magda. Magda asks, what advice would you give to a user researcher whose PM doesn't know anything about the research?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think you have to really collaborate with them. Is it a case of, Magda, is it a case of them not knowing research that's been previously done, or not knowing how to do research?
We will wait for a response from Magda.
Oh, not knowing how to do the research and the value. Okay, right. So yeah, so I think with that, it's start with usability stuff. So start with that kind of tactical research. So get them to observe you doing some testing. And then I think the key thing about it is, one, getting them involved in shaping the actual research plan, but also reporting back those insights on what you found. And then I think also it's getting into that mind of a PM. So some PMs are different from others. So if this PM is more of a commercial PM and wants to know about money saved and time saved and all of that stuff, like when you get those insights after you've done some research, like see if you can translate those opportunities into things into a saving, or how it ladders up to the business goals. So I think this is where, like, think more commercially here, and so they can see what the value is. I think also just doing I don't know if there's any videos or anything, but like just bringing some of those stats that I've got around how research can actually save money, how research actually saves time in the long run, and it's really about de-risking things. So I think it's almost about reframing it, because it sounds like this PM just thinks it's a waste of time and we're kind of just doing it for the sake of doing it. I think it's just really focusing on the value of it, but not just the usability value, the commercial value as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vanessa. That is just about all we have time for. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. Thank you to everyone that tuned in today. And Vanessa, thank you so much for your great talk. We'll have the recording available ASAP. So yeah, just keep an eye on your emails for when that one pops up. Our next talk is in just over an hour at 4 p.m. Central European time from the team at Condé Nast. Beatrice Taranini, Senior Product Designer at Vogue, Danielle Vargas, Senior UX Content Designer at The New Yorker, and Lily Boyce, who is Senior Interactive Designer and Developer at Condé Nast Data Story Lab. As I said, that is in just over an hour. There's still time to sign up. So we hope to see you back then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.